Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cornell Fine Arts Museum virtually. So my name is Isaac Gorres, and I'm currently the Fred W. Hicks Curatorial Fellow at the Cornell Fine Arts Museum at Rollins College. Additionally, I am a senior here at Rollins, where I major in biochemistry, molecular biology, and art history with a minor in studio art, which is always a fun combination. So ultimately, with that, I'm planning on going into art conservation. So before I get started, I like to usually start all of my tours with just a general background on CFAM's collection, just to kind of refresh those who might not be that familiar with CFAM. So CFAM has a collection of over 5,600 artworks, and it holds works by many renowned artists. The collection began over a century ago, but was jump-started when the Samuel H. Kress Foundation donated several Italian Renaissance paintings in 1937, including Madonna enthroned nursing the Christ child by Cosimo Rosselli. So Cosimo Rosselli frescoed the walls of the Sistine Chapel. So that's just showing you some of the more traditionally appreciated as historic artworks in our collection. The current building was finished in 1978 and then remodeled in 2006. So currently, CFAM is located at the end of Holt Avenue, and everyone at CFAM is looking forward for all of you guys to come back. So we have reopened with a mandatory mask policy and limited museum capacity. So if you feel comfortable, definitely stop by. And then additionally, I just like to always direct people to this events brochure, which has some relevant events that you might find interesting. Additionally, all of that information can be found on the CFAM events page. So moving along to the topic of today's tour. So if everyone can see this right now, I'm switching over to my PowerPoint, and you should be looking at a work by Andrea Bowers entitled Community or Chaos, and it is a large neon work. The exhibition that we'll be talking about today is entitled Art Encounters, Community or Chaos, and it provides examples of how art can showcase the power of protest and challenge the viewer to rethink their positions on a variety of social issues. So titled after the first work in the exhibition, so this is right as you walk into the museum. The exhibition references the final book of Martin Luther King Jr. before his assassination, entitled "Where Do We Go? Where Do We Go from Here? Chaos or Community?" Additionally, the exhibition responded to the events brought to the front of the national conversation after the murder of George Floyd and so many others. So Community or Chaos addresses the need for racial justice as protests and demonstrations occurred and continue to occur across the country. Now, the exhibition has been up for almost a full year, and today we will be revisiting many of the pieces with a fresh perspective. As the country is currently in the midst of the trial of Derek Chauvin, it is imperative that we turn to art to engender these critical discussions about race and about social issues. So just moving through the works, all of the 6 artists represented in this exhibition are contemporary, meaning that they have been active post-1980. So typically I like asking people, what are some words that come to mind, or what are some ideas that come to mind when you think about contemporary art? So if you do have any opinions about contemporary art before we go through the tour, I would encourage you to write those in the chat, and then just kind of like look at how potentially your opinions towards contemporary art will change as we discuss some of the ideological background of some of these works. So hopefully this exhibition will give you a new perspective on contemporary artists and how many practicing artists use their careers to highlight relevant social issues. A lot of artists serve as social catalysts looking for change. So although there are 6 artists represented in this exhibition, we will spend today closely examining and contextualizing works by 3 artists, including Pedro Reyes, Willis Thomas, and Andrea Bowers. Andrea Bowers, once again, completed the work in front of you, but we will discuss her work at the end of the presentation. Let's start by looking at a fan favorite at CFAM, a series of 4 steel and concrete sculptures by Mexican contemporary artist Pedro Reyes. So here you can see, sorry, Siri's going off. Here you can see the gallery of the exhibition space. And as you can see, at the end of the hallway are the protesters, so the first work that we'll be discussing. And then over to the left, the pin back button that says, "I am the greatest," along the wall. That is the work by Willis Thomas that we will discuss. And then the work by Bowers is directly opposite of the works at the end of the hallway. So it's behind us in this image. So the first body of work that we'll be discussing is these 4 artworks by Pedro Reyes. So usually I like to ask what the audience thinks that these sculptures represent, but I put the title on the slide, so not very good planning on my part. But as you can see, these works are supposed to represent protesters and really comment on the revolutionary power of protest. So Pedro Reyes is a multimedia artist who has an adept ability to select the media, which most effectively communicates the message of his individual artworks. So protesters and the larger body of work of Reyes have received critical acclaim for their emphasis of protest, once again, as a revolutionary force. Additionally, zooming in for some details, we can see that not only are these protesters, but they are female protesters. Their bodies are rendered as very modular, but there still is the hint that the figures do have female anatomy. Additionally, Reyes's choice of concrete and steel as the materials for this artwork could be interpreted to reference industrial materials such as asphalt and concrete, commonly seen in streets and roads, the exact places where protests occur. So he's really making a direct connection between his artworks that are celebrating protests to the actual location where protests take place. Additionally, it almost seems that the concrete is molded around everyday steel rebar, reinforcing these connections to the apparent bullet holes in the sculptures may reference residual violence, often accompanying protests. So although these works were created in 2017, they do have increasing relevance today. So in March of 2021, a women's march in Mexico City protesting the current Mexican president's continued support of a politician accused of rape turned violent, resulting in at least 81 injuries. And of course, there were probably many more injuries than that. So thus, even though these works were created in 2017, just by having cavities resembling bullet holes or resembling erosion, Reyes is really trying to connect these sculptures to both the peaceful act of protesting, but also the unfortunately violent side of protesting that protesters sometimes experience. And then finally, the sense of anonymity that is lent to the sculptures by the absence of identifying features. So if you look here, the heads of the figures are just represented as simple blocks. So there isn't any recognizable physiognomy. So this kind of just alludes to the fact that these protesters could be literally any women protesting literally any issue. So that just kind of lends it a sense of universality. Additionally, Reyes is interested in mental health, and his previous artistic practice really speaks to this. So many of his works take the form of interactive installations where the viewer interacts with a therapist, whether that is an actual therapist or another viewer of the artwork kind of acting as a therapist. So in his 2011 installation Sanatorium, for example, visitors were required to sign up as a patient, and then they were diagnosed and subjected to at least 3 of 16 available therapies, including hypnotherapy, improvisational warm-up exercises, and trust-building sessions with complete strangers. So on his website, Reyes describes Sanatorium, that work, as a quote democratization of therapy, and as a form of quote psychological first aid. And I think it's important to note that all therapy sessions in that exhibition were conducted by non-professionals. So just like this body of work, Protesters, Sanatorium was concerned with the human ability to help others and to help ourselves. In Protesters, the women are demanding social change for the betterment of society, while in Sanatorium, the viewer actively involves himself in therapy sessions intended to begin to heal psychological trauma and distress. So if you guys do have any questions about this work in particular, please just comment them in the chat, and then there will be a space at the end for questions. So now let's move to our next artwork, which is a text artwork created by American contemporary artist Willis Thomas in 2019. And this should actually say 2019 and not 2012. So this artwork was created in 2019 by American conceptual artist Willis Thomas, as I said. And Willis Thomas was born in Plainsfield, New Jersey in 1976, but he currently maintains a studio in Brooklyn, New York. As some of you may have noticed, his 2019 I Am the Greatest takes the form of an oversized pinback button. So if you look behind it, there is actually like a giant like version of the pin on the pinback buttons. And especially in the 20th century, pinback buttons served as a means of promoting political movements, both through the money gained by their sale, and then also as a means of spreading the word about a movement. Supporters of movements would wear buttons around, and that would be a way of kind of vocalizing your support for a movement. So this work addresses themes of identity, culture, and commodity. So the quote, "I am the greatest," actually originates from a 1964 quotation from professional boxer Muhammad Ali. So in 1964, he claimed that he was the greatest, not only in boxing, but in everything. So after a victory against boxer Sonny Liston, Ali claimed, quote, "I am the greatest. I am the greatest thing that ever lived. I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest." So Willis Thomas' 2011 Strange Fruit series comprised a string of photographs that explored the culture of the spectacles surrounding Black bodies in professional and collegiate sports. And I think that that is kind of much in the same vein as we see in this work, because the "I Am the Greatest" pins were actually, they were produced in mass for both the supporters of Ali, but also his fans. So Willis Thomas has expressed admiration for Ali, in that Muhammad Ali was born in 1942 Kentucky as a descendant of antebellum enslaved people. And by the age of 22, he was already claiming to be the best, and he had the title really to back it up. So interestingly, Willis Thomas does not ascribe to the concept of race. He considers racial groups to be arbitrary and originating in the white colonial imagination. Additionally, Willis Thomas once said that he is more inspired by Beyonce than Picasso. So further evidence of his preference of pop culture over dated Eurocentric faces of so-called Western art history. So overall, the work of Hank Willis Thomas often piggybacks on social movements relevant to the current times. But a reason that I like to discuss this work is just because it is text-based. So that is part of what Barbara Alfond. So as you can see, this work is in the Alfond collection, and it is normally displayed at the Alfond Inn, but currently it's in the museum. So the Alfond collection was a gift of Barbara and Theodore Alfond, and it was kind of established so that Rollins could maintain a philanthropic boutique hotel. So this collection is displayed within the hotel, but also within the museum. And as a part of that, Barbara Alfond really wanted a lot of the works to focus on text. And I think that this work is a great example in that respect, because it it gives you this this message that might not be apparent to people who aren't familiar with Muhammad Ali, or even the concept of pinback buttons, but it does still maintain some aspect of universal character. So finally, let's move on to our last artwork. So this is a large neon work created in 2017 by Andrea Bowers. So Andrea Bowers is an American artist born in 1965 and currently based in Los Angeles. So Bowers' artwork is inherently political, tackling such issues such as the #MeToo movement and issues affecting trans and LGBT plus communities. So this work takes the form of a large neon sign situated above the front desk at CFAM, once again, opposite of Reyes' protesters. So community is depicted in 2 lines in yellow neon, and chaos is depicted upside down in blue neon. Additionally, when you're standing in front of the work, chaos actually flickers slightly. And perhaps this flickering of chaos is meant to evoke uncertainty. Certainly the inverted nature of the words is meant to evoke uncertainty. So when the work is viewed from the side, it's actually revealed that the cardboard surrounding the neon, so this is a neon sign encased in cardboard letters, that it's actually revealed that that cardboard was upcycled from produce packaging. So if we look here, this is kind of an oblique view of it, you can see the word cherries along the upside down A in chaos, kind of right towards the front of that letter. So the sourcing of materials from what appears to be a farmer's market, I mean, I'm not sure where else you would encounter a farmer's market or a grocery store, underlines the message of community that this work really underlines. Also, I would like to point out, and once again, this is just kind of building off of Barbara Alfond's desire to collect text-based works for the Alfond collection. But not only is it community, it's unity, and unity is separated from the word, and it stands alone as its own word. So all of those decisions were assuredly intentional, and all of them can be interpreted in a variety of valid ways by the audience. Additionally, the work references the last book, once again written by Martin Luther King Jr., entitled "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" So in the text, King Jr. advances for human rights and a sense of hope. So that's why I wanted to end on this work, because it's hopeful. But also I would like to point out that Bowers actually switched around community and chaos in her construction of this artwork. So not only is it kind of a reimagining of Martin Luther King Jr.'s text, but it's really illustrating the artist's interaction with that text. However, not even Bowers is immune to controversy. So when Andrea Bowers began making a work in 2018, documenting men accused of sexual misconduct by the #MeToo movement. She wanted it to be a monument honoring the courage of survivors. Um, However, she included photographs in that artwork uh, of um, of one of the men that she was talking about, one of their alleged rape survivors. So she included images posted to Twitter documenting injuries sustained during an alleged rape, but this was without the consent of the person whose images were depicted, and this sparked a lot of outrest and a lot of outcry. Um, Eventually, Bowers uh, the contested photos were removed, and Bowers apologized to the survivor for using her likeness without her permission. So this episode really underlines the need for socially engaged artists to really tread lightly and tread carefully and really consider all aspects of the issues that they're engaging with. So although socially engaged art can be extremely thought-provoking, artists need to carefully select the issues that they portray and the actual mechanics of their projects to avoid controversial actions that upset the very people the artwork attempted to uplift. So thank you everyone for coming with me today and discussing the works on view at CFAM. I hope that you now feel better acquainted with some of the artwork currently on display and the ways contemporary artists use art as a vehicle for social change. And if you liked what you saw today, be sure to visit the Alfond Inn, where there is a permanent rotating installation of contemporary art that is free and accessible 24/7. So be safe, everyone, and please wear your masks. And I will now open it up for questions. Okay, it looks like we have a question from Gisela Carbonell, who is the curator at CFAM. She said, Isaac, now that you have engaged with the exhibition of the year, or for a year, which of these works resonates most with you and why? Ooh, that's a difficult question. Um, yeah, so probably I would say um, definitely uh, Reyes' Protesters. That has been a favorite of mine really since I matriculated at Rollins and since I really explored the Alfond Inn um, and really looked at all the works that were up. And why? I like the way that it elevates really everyday materials into high art. Just its use of even the plywood of the podiums also could potentially reference the materials seen in construction sites. And I think that connection is it might not be apparent, but it's there, and to me it's just genius. So definitely that work. Thank you. So are there any more questions? Awesome. It looks like David Reuter, sorry if I mispronounced your name, said, this is great. Awesome. Yeah, so hop on. Yeah, so definitely come back. So this talk will be available in perpetuity online, so you can revisit it whenever you want. Awesome. So unless there are any other questions, I guess I could think of a question to ask myself. Otherwise, if no one else has any other questions, I would just like to thank all of you guys again for spending um, time with me. And yes, definitely come visit the museum whenever you have the time. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Bye.